4, 3, 2, 1, and we are live again. Welcome if you're joining us for week 2 of the Worldpackers Lives webinars, where we reach out to you, our travel community, to find out what life is like around the world, how you're coping, how you're remaining positive, and hopefully learning something from you that we can share with the rest of the community. So today there's quite a contrast. So yesterday, if you were with me, we were speaking with Marina in El Salvador, and she was on a lush farm with a swimming pool, huge big garden. She was quarantined, so it wasn't a complete holiday. But today we're going to New York, which is a little bit different, I imagine. Today we have the amazing Julie Ball, who I would like to introduce now. Hello, Julie.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Julie, and I am a blogger for Worldpackers. I'm in Queens, New York, which is now, the epicenter of this coronavirus in the United States, and specifically in New York City. So I'm happy to be here and to talk a little bit more about what my experience has been and is continuing to be, and as it relates to both my job as, I work in the travel industry for AFS USA, which is an international student exchange company, and also just personally.
Okay, so you live and work in New York. How quickly did the change set in from, so it was announced around mid-January, how quickly did things begin to change in New York?
Yeah, very quickly. So it wasn't until I think the beginning of March that at least myself, we started taking it very seriously in New York. And even then people were still going to work, still, going like life as usual. It was somewhat downplayed, I think, by a lot of people. We didn't realize how serious as it was. And so we, I don't think we did as much testing as maybe we could have. We definitely weren't prepared for what we're seeing now, even though there's incredible measures being taken. And I think within, a 2-week period at the beginning of March, people were really starting to realize that they needed to stock up, which resulted in a lot of stores being undersupplied. Toilet paper obviously was a major commodity, and the non-essential workers and identifying who was essential. There was definitely some fear that public transportation would shut down, which it hasn't yet. I think that a lot of people in New York rely on that, and our essential workers rely on that. So it was really just the media telling us, do not go outside, take care of your families, make sure you're not, going outside if you don't need to, and definitely don't congregate. Things started getting canceled. A lot of the New York Roadrunners events, which I love, were canceled. And that's when I kind of knew that, yes, this would be very serious, and it would be a few weeks, if not longer, before things return to normal.
Okay, so as the epicenter in the US, how strict are the restrictions right now? So you are allowed to leave the house.
Yeah, you're permitted to leave. I know that a lot of us are getting updates from our Governor Cuomo, and his show at, I call it a show because it's become this it's like a late night television show. He's just so animated, and people have fallen in love with him and the way he's just very forthright. So we kind of get our guidance from his updates, and also, in particular, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the World Health Organization. And I think people are trying to abide by those rules, but it's not yet in New York, to my knowledge, a shelter in place like it is in other states where you're really not permitted unless it's, you're getting essential groceries or emergency supplies, medicine. For us, I think if we do go outside, it's just recommended we stay 6 feet away from each other. Don't go out more than once for exercise, and only go out if it's essential again. Yeah.
So I've seen a movie or two about New York, and the idea of New Yorkers staying 6 feet away from each other doesn't compute in my head.
It's near impossible.
So I was doing some research about New York, and it was over 8 million people packed in the 5 boroughs, over 800 languages spoken. So it's a huge, big melting pot of people, of flesh. So then to separate everybody by that, the few meters distance.
It's so difficult. Even, you wish sidewalks were bigger because, people are going outside if they have to and they're wearing masks, but there is a shortage of masks, and the masks are really needed by healthcare workers. And so it's interesting to go outside and people kind of give you the side eye, you say hello and thank you to the UPS driver or the mailman or the people that are, that have to work, that are going out and endangering themselves for us, basically. And so it's definitely interesting because you live in such small apartments, and all the schools are closed. So a lot of people are in their small apartments with their children. And it's turning nice outside. So people want to go outside and can't. And it's definitely a struggle. And even in, the parks that you have, you don't want to go out because the parks are sometimes crowded. They haven't been totally closed, and people do want to go outside to exercise. So it depends on where you are in New York, but people love to enjoy their city. And it's very hard to get people to stay inside.
And the New Yorkers, the stereotype is quite resistant to being told what to do. Except
I feel like this has brought people closer together and kind of I don't really know my neighbors, and I know a lot of people in New York City don't know their neighbors, but I know in a few cases people in their apartment blocks, or everyone's home, so they'll my friends have been sliding notes under the door like clap at 7 for healthcare workers, or 5 o'clock happy hour out your window, cheers at 5. It is bringing New Yorkers together, and in sometimes interesting ways too. At yesterday in Brooklyn, I heard a neighborhood came together at 7 o'clock and sang a Biggie song. Interesting. That's very nice. So we're kind of mimicking what Italy and other countries have done, and trying to keep spirits up, but in a very New York way.
Okay, so what lyrics are you practicing right now for the next rendition?
Yeah, I don't know. Queens hasn't gotten behind that yet. Okay. I heard a lone clapper at 7 last night, so I'm really going to try to join in tonight.
Okay, so anybody watching from Queens, 7 o'clock tonight?
Join me.
Clap nice and loud. Okay. So just regarding specifically you then, so you don't work from home, is that correct? Normally, you don't?
Normally, I do not work from home. I work in Lower Manhattan, and the one time I went in like 2 weeks ago, it was very eerie and the streets were empty, and I've never seen New York like that. And the subway, I mean, it was almost nice because the commute really tight up next to people. Usually it's a much different story. Yeah.
Okay. So you're forced to work from home. I know you said that most New York apartments are quite small and compact. How are you coping with that personally?
Yeah, it's very hard for me personally to remove myself from work, because my bedroom, my kitchen is now my office. So I find myself checking emails all the time, or always thinking, always checking my phone, thinking I'm on all the time. And I need to remind myself to keep a schedule. And I mean, the nature of my business, the being in the travel industry, our student safety is, primarily the most important thing. So I do have to work weekends and nights, and this has resulted in longer work hours for industries beyond the healthcare industry. Although they're like on the ground, hands in, but it's interesting working from home from a very small space. You really need to make time for yourself, and I'm kind of trying to do the streaming workouts that are offered online, and I've had some Zoom trivia nights and karaoke nights. And if you have not tried Google Arts and Culture, you're missing out because it's amazing. And I think Worldpackers might have shared it, but it's basically you can take virtual tours of museums and volcanoes, and it's amazing.
Oh, okay.
And I know Worldpackers also did an online yoga class, and I highly recommend doing that if you're, even if you're not stuck in a tiny New York apartment, if you're, somewhere lush and beautiful, you could still partake in a yoga class. Good for everybody.
Okay, so yoga, fitness, are you doing any online courses, or how else are you keeping your brain active?
Yeah, work has kept me pretty active and busy. But I have heard of, people doing Duolingo, and Rosetta Stone stock is way up. So I know that people are trying to do these self-development classes. And I know that, crafting for me has been something that I've kind of put aside, but I've gotten more into cross stitching and these things that I'm taking online tutorials on, things that you never really made time for before. And also, like, I enjoy catching up on the travel blogs and other, articles that I just never had time or made time to read, and planning my next trips, because I love to travel and I had to cancel a trip because of this. And some people are, on their trip and weren't able to really enjoy it because they're stuck in, or maybe not even stuck in, but weren't able to partake in things that might have been closed by that time. So planning your next trips, really reading up, and doing your research. This is a great time to do that. Just taking a pause and making a new bucket list. That's something I try to journal every day, and maybe write down the next place you want to go. And maybe that's changed after all this. Maybe you're like, oh, I really want to, I don't know, see somewhere because I saw it on a Worldpackers live. Maybe I really want more.
Absolutely agreed. We've got some questions coming in on the live stream, and somebody's saying they've never been to New York. This is Carol. Most of what they've seen is from the movies and TV shows, and is that an accurate representation of New York?
No, there's so much more to New York. Usually in movies and TV shows, you see the very touristy spot, like everywhere. They show you Times Square, they show you, maybe Lower Manhattan, like Wall Street, where I actually work down there and I see a lot of tourists. But I try to also point them in the direction of the outer boroughs, like Queens and Brooklyn. There's a ton to see. And in Queens, there's so much good food and such a diversity of people. Brooklyn obviously is really up and coming. A lot of, New Yorkers live there now, and commute into the city. And there's just so many cute shops and bookstores and main streets. And I mean, New York is a lot bigger than Manhattan. Even in Manhattan, there's things like the High Line, which is an elevated park in Chelsea, built on an old railroad. So there's things that are kind of hidden that living here or spending a little bit of time here as a digital nomad, perhaps, really, it opens your eyes and you see it through a different light. There's a lot of things to explore. So I'd encourage you to research and read up and find little hidden gems.
Okay. So with the impact of this, obviously the whole tourism industry is suffering. All those little places that you said, are they getting support from the state or from the federal government?
I'm
Or
glad you brought
how?
that up. Yeah, there's been a huge movement in encouraging people to take out food, and there's even been a revision or suspension or something to the law that allows people to take out alcoholic drinks in New York, at least. So that's very interesting because it keeps bars alive. I know that there is a government program for small businesses, and also companies that don't lay off their workers, potentially they furlough, and they're given a loan to keep on their workers. And that may down the line turn into a grant from the federal government. There's also been news recently that each American, citizen making under a certain amount of money will receive a one-time check in the mail to help cover rent expenses or emergency expenses. Also, I lost my train of thought, but there's a lot of things. Oh yeah, being done by celebrities and people with a large following. They're doing live streams of a concert to raise funds for small businesses or for musicians or for writers.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot going on to support small businesses, but I know it's still a struggle, and I know a lot of people that are out of work because of this.
So once this passes, do you imagine life going back to normal in New York, or do you think the tourist experience or the travel experience will change somehow fundamentally?
Yeah, I think things will definitely change, but I don't know if they'll be for the worse. I think people will come out of this with a greater understanding of healthcare, a greater understanding of what teachers do and how much they do, and that they deserve in the US. They're not paid that well, at least in my experience and the teachers I know. I think that we'll have a greater, pride in our local businesses and support of our local businesses and restaurants. And, New York has a ton of those. And also a greater understanding of the need for free lunches at schools. That doesn't really affect traveling and people that, come here as tourists. But as a nation, I think, this is an election year. I think we have a lot of policy changes that might happen because of this, or maybe are sped up because of this. A lot of people are giving to great causes. There's actually a lack of dogs to foster right now in New York. I think maybe there's a few because so many New Yorkers are now at home and they're like, why don't I foster a dog? So it's one of those crazy things that come out of a situation like this. Something that's somewhat positive. I wish there were no animals in shelters to begin with, but people are trying to do good, and there are ways to do good from home. And one of them is fostering, an animal. So.
Okay, no, I like that. I hadn't considered that, but
yeah, it's interesting.
A couple more questions. If somebody was to do their first volunteering experience in New York, or in the whole of America, I don't know if you can speak to that, but where would you recommend for doing volunteering?
Sure. It really depends on what type of volunteer experience you're looking for. I can speak from personal experience. I was in AmeriCorps, which is kind of a United States version of the Peace Corps. And there's a lot of national parks that accept volunteers to do like trail rebuilding. And if you're very outdoorsy, maybe the American West would be more your thing if you like to hike and, wide open spaces. But down in New Orleans, I was a volunteer, and they're always looking for help, rebuilding houses after the hurricane still. That it was, years and years ago. and there's constant rebuilding of houses needed. And New Orleans is an amazing city. It is one of my top cities in the world that I've lived and been to. New York itself, we have parks upstate. So, you know, in the Adirondack Mountains that always need assistance with, you know, trail building and maintenance. But also you could work for, you know, maybe New York Cares or some, you have to check out the Worldpackers site. But I know there are opportunities, and New York is, I mean, there's disparities here as there are everywhere. But yeah, I definitely just check the Worldpackers site and maybe work with one of the experts and in regards to like what you're interested in and where your strengths lie.
Perfect. Joanne's yoga online is so hard. They think that you must be elastic.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know about that, but you know, the good thing about streaming workout classes is you can see them and they can't see you. So, you know, if you need a break or you can't, you don't have to.
You just grunt at the right time and say,
exactly, yeah. They can't hear you either, I hope.
Where is the best pizza in New York?
Ooh, I feel like if there's any New Yorkers on here, they might like me. And to be honest, and this isn't everyone's opinion, so to be honest, I just love the dollar slice pizza at Two Brothers, which you can find in Manhattan or in Brooklyn, and it's literally $1 a slice, but it's the best pizza, especially, you know, when you're looking for cheap and on the go. And yeah, but you know what makes the pizza and bagels here so good is the water. We get, you know, New York City water is some of the best in the world. It comes down from upstate New York, and that's what makes a difference in the pizza and the bagels.
Okay, you heard it here first. Okay.
Yeah.
One final question on the live chat. Have you been to Brazil yet? And if not, do you plan to?
I would love to come to Brazil. I've heard amazing things. I have not been, but yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list. I've heard amazing things, not only about Rio, which is very popular, but about the entire country and Sao Paulo and the people. And you know, I'd love to come during Carnival, or maybe not. Maybe it's a little too crazy, but yeah, I'd love to visit one of these days. I have a lot of Brazilian students that come to the U.S. on international exchange through the company for AFS. So I feel like I've learned a lot about the culture. So yeah, I look forward to visiting someday.
Perfect. Okay, that's it for the questions. And if you have like a positive, warming, just a reassuring message for anybody out there who's in a similar kind of situation, who's maybe feeling a bit down, a bit isolated, a bit lonely. Do you have any kind New Yorker words to share with them?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, I'd take after Mr. Rogers and say, look for the helpers. I think this has been kind of quoted recently quite a bit. There's always someone doing something positive, and, you know, you can do something good even from home. And that's as simple as staying home to protect your loved ones, to protect other people and other people's loved ones. So yeah, I would say definitely just, you know, make sure if you know a healthcare worker or someone that has to go outside every day and is helping others, to say thank you and to hear those stories. It's uplifting. And I try to journal every day. It's kind of helped me, and it will be very interesting looking back. And I know people are encouraging their children or friends or coworkers to do so, and some even have shared their journal entries and made book clubs, and do what makes you happy and take it one day at a time. I think one thing that I was just talking to my family about is how it's strange not having something to look forward to necessarily. Like usually I'm looking forward to my next trip. Usually I'm looking at my next meeting, my next trip, my next vacation, my next adventure, maybe. But I'm living in the present right now because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. Things could change. So try to use this time to live in the present and experience what that's like.
That was a beautiful message and perfect way to end the call. Thank you very much, Julie.
Happy
It's
to
been
be here.
an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.
Stay safe. And
Yes.
If there are big developments, I would love to have you back on for an
Sounds
update.
good.
Hopefully things pass fairly quickly. That curve has been breached now, hopefully. But yeah, stay in touch. Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Worldpackers viewers.
Thank you.
See you next time.
So that was a live report from the ground in New York. Definitely eye-opening because it's in the news all day long. New York, the epicenter, and the majority is fairly negative, like the stats, field hospitals opening up. It's really good to have that positive, reassuring message that people are they are getting on with their day-to-day lives. The community is coming together, and if New Yorkers can come together, then anybody can come together. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got a lot of value from that. Join me tomorrow, where we'll be going a little bit calmer, a little bit more peaceful. We'll be going to Uruguay to speak to Felipe. So if you have any suggestions, any ideas, or any comments, reply to my emails, let me know what you think, and I will see you tomorrow.